Hi guys, we're going to go over your vocabulary for the week, your literary terms, and we're going to do a shared read. Okay, first we're going to take a look at your essential question for the week. How do inventions and technology affect your life? If we take a look at the picture here, we see an invention that someone has made which has helped this gentleman to walk, and in this case, run. Changing lives. For some people, new inventions and advanced technology provide a way to fulfill their dreams. The man in the photo is able to compete in the Paralympics now that he has an artificial leg that allows him to run long distances. So this has made a big difference in this gentleman's life. He wanted to compete, and now that he has a prosthetic leg, he is able to run in races. A dream of his, to be a runner. Let's take a look at your vocabulary words for the week. We'll start with the word decade. Decade is a period of 10 years. Okay, most of you are 1 decade old. You have lived for 10 years. So when someone says a decade, it's 10 years. The company celebrated a decade of business honoring 10 years of work. So the company had been open for 10 years. Directing. The police officers are directing traffic. Directing traffic means they are telling the traffic which way to go. Directing means you are telling someone, something, or guiding something to go a certain way. If you are a crossing guard, what would you be directing students to do? And if you're a crossing guard, you will be directing the students to cross the street. Engineering. Engineering. Engineering is the work that uses scientific knowledge for practical things such as building bridges and building dams. Okay, so engineering is often used to build structures. I think the beautiful Golden Gate Bridge is an amazing feat of engineering. An engineer built the bridge and they used engineering to design it. Gleaming. Gleaming. Gleaming means when something is shining or glowing. Something is very bright, shining, and glowing. The shiny bar of gold lay gleaming on the red velvet. See how bright and shiny it is? Scouted. Scouted is when someone goes out to find information. They looked or explored in order to find out and bring back the information. Remember how we talked about the pioneers traveling west in the covered wagons? They used to send scouts out to check the area to see what the area was like because no one had traveled there before. They would go out, they would scout the area, and they would come back with the information. Scouted is the past tense of scout. The boy used binoculars as he scouted the best place to find whales. Okay, so he is looking to find out the information of where is the best place to find whales. Squirmed. The pig wiggled and squirmed in the girl's arms. Squirmed. Squirmed means to have turned and twisted your body. Okay, so it's kind of like wiggling. Technology. Technology is the use of science for practical purposes. So when you use something that you've learned in science, like in engineering to make a bridge, when you use something you've learned in science, like in business and in industry, this is technology. Okay. Tinkering. Tinkering is puttering or keeping busy in an aimless way. It says Mr. Land likes tinkering with and fixing old clocks. So Mr. Land is not sure what's wrong with these clocks. He just kind of plays with them, tinkers around, with them and tries to fix them. He has no specific goal in mind when he starts tinkering. He just wants to play with it long enough to see if he can figure out what is wrong and repair it. All right, let's read the story, A Telephone Mix-Up. Our genre this week is historical fiction, and I'm sure you all remember historical fiction is a story that is not true, but it is based on an event that actually happened. So, the example that we use often when we talk about historical fiction is the story of the Mayflower. When Christopher Columbus came to America and discovered America, we could make up a story and pretend that we were on the boat with Christopher Columbus. This would be historical fiction. We would have made up our story based on a real event that happened in history. Remember our central question: how do inventions and technology affect your life? Let's keep that in mind as we read. By tomorrow afternoon, there will be 8 telephones right here in Centerburg, Ohio, and one of them will be ours. Dr. Erickson said to his daughter Meg, I predict that before this decade is over, in just another 5 years, there could be 100. So he says before the decade, the 10-year period is over, there could be 100 phones in their area. That's how fast I foresee this technology will spread. So he thinks that everyone is going to want to have the technology of being able to use a phone in their homes. When people need help, they'll call me on the telephone. Envision how many lives it will save. Picture all the amazing benefits. Meg realized that not everyone thought the telephone was an engineering marvel. Remember we said engineering is the work that uses scientific knowledge for practical things? So someone designed this telephone using scientific knowledge. It is an engineering marvel. It means that someone used engineering to design and create this telephone. She had heard people say that telephones were a useless invention. A few others felt the newfangled machine would open up a Pandora's box of troubles, causing people to stop visiting each other and writing letters. Pandora's box is a reference to a story where a box was opened and nothing but trouble came from the box. So she's saying that this telephone is going to cause lots of trouble. People are going to stop going to each other's houses, and they're going to stop writing letters. Despite the concerns of some people, progress marched on. Just weeks earlier, Centerburg's first telephone had been installed in Mr. Kane's general store. Another was put in at the hotel, and yet another at the newspaper office. Mrs. Kane was the town's first switchboard operator, directing incoming calls to the correct lines. In the olden days when they had new telephones, when they were first invented, they had a person who sat at a board and she would connect the wires by hand. She would answer it. The call would come into the main office where she sat, and she would connect the call to the other line. The lines were not connected in the street. She had to make the connections. The next morning, Meg wrote, remember directing we said is when you tell someone which way to go. So in this instance, the operator is guiding and directing the phone call to the correct place. The next morning, Meg wrote October 9th, 1905 on the top of her slate with chalk while she squirmed in her seat, wishing that the long school day was over. So she was wiggling around, moving, twisting, and turning in her seat because she wanted to go home because she was excited about their new telephone. Walking home that afternoon, Meg scouted the street, looking for the tall wooden poles that were going up weekly. She was looking for the poles that the wires were connected on for the telephone. Thick wire linked one pole to another, and Meg imagined how each wire would carry the words of friends and neighbors, their conversations zipping over the lines, bringing news, birthday wishes, and party invitations. As Meg hurried into the house, she let the screen door slam shut behind her. There on the wall was the gleaming wooden telephone box with the heavy black receiver on a hook. The box was shining. Her father was smiling broadly while tinkering with the shiny brass bells on top. So her father was playing with the brass bells on top, messing with them. Isn't it a beauty? He asked. Have you ever seen such magnificence? Suddenly the telephone jangled loudly, causing both Ericksons to jump. Meg laughed as her father picked up the receiver and shouted, "Yes, hello, this is the doctor." "Again, please, Miss Kane. There's too much static," Dr. Erickson shouted. "I didn't get the first part. Bad cough? Turner Farm?" "Can I go, Father?" Meg asked as Dr. Erickson returned the receiver to the hook. "Absolutely," he said, grabbing his medical kit and heading outside where his horse and buggy waited. Meg wanted to go with the doctor on his call. When they got to the farm, they found Mr. Turner walking toward the barn. "Jake, I got here as quick as I could," Dr. Erickson said. "Is it Mrs. Turner? Little Emma?" Jake Turner looked confused, but he gestured them toward the barn. There they found a baby goat curled near its mother. The baby snorted, coughed, and looked miserable. "Jake, I'm no vet," said Dr. Erickson. "You need Dr. Kerrigan. I was wondering why you showed up instead. I reckon there was a mix-up." "Apparently so," Dr. Erickson laughed. "When I get back, I'll send Dr. Kerrigan." So the phone call was sent to the doctor for people instead of the doctor for animals by mistake. As years passed, the telephone proved to be very useful to the town of Centerburg, but there was always the occasional mix-up. It became common among the Ericksons to refer to a miscommunication as another sick goat. So whenever there was a mistake and they would get a phone call and it was not meant to be for them, and it was a mistake that they received, that they would call it another sick goat. Okay, referring to the mixed up call that they first got when they went to see the baby goat. All right, let's take a look at your literary terms for the week. The first literary term this week is make predictions. Now we know that to make predictions is when we guess what is going to happen next based on clues from our story. So we take the information that we know about our story and we guess what will happen next. Our next literary term is point of view. Again, we have also taken the narrator's point of view shows us what the narrator thinks or feels about the characters, the events in the story, how he feels about the story itself in general. A story can have a first-person narrator or a third-person narrator. Sorry. First-person narrator means that the person who is telling the story is one of the characters in the story. Third-person narrator means that the person is outside of the story, telling the story. Someone is talking about the story, but they're not part of the story. Okay? We'll learn more about that a little later. Historical fiction. Historical fiction is a story that is made up, although the characters are realistic, like people we see every day in real life, places that we see every day in real life, and events that happen every day in real life. But the story is made up based around an event that actually happened. Like, for instance, remember the 6th of October war that we celebrate every year at school? We could write a story about a young man who took part in the 6th of October war, but he didn't actually take part in the war. It's just a made-up story. The war actually happened. This is the historical part. The boy being in the war is made up. This is the fiction part, the part that is not true. Dialogue. Dialogue is the conversation that the characters have between each other when they talk to each other in the story. Historical fiction often has dialogue in it. We know that there is dialogue in our story because the words are written with quotation marks, which we took last week, I think before the vacation. The last day before the vacation, we took punctuation and dialogue, and we talked about how dialogue was the conversation between people, and we put the quotation marks around the person who's speaking exact words. Okay, the person who is speaking, the exact words that come from their mouth, we put quotations around, if you recall. Okay, so dialogue is when the characters talk to each other. And that is it. Last word. Okay, that's it for the reading video. I'll come back in a few minutes and do the grammar video for those of you who stayed at home today. All right. See you in a few minutes. Bye-bye.